The sun hung low over the Carolina fields, its amber light spilling across rows of parched corn stalks and dust-laced roads. The summer heat clung to everything like a silent weight, and the only sound was the occasional whisper of wind through brittle leaves. Somewhere beyond the horizon, a storm was gathering, but for now, the world was quiet, suspended in that odd stillness only found in forgotten rural towns. Anya Brown walked barefoot along the shoulder of the road, her worn canvas shoes tied together and slung over one shoulder. Her school blouse was threadbare at the elbows, the hem stained with yesterday's rainwater, but her eyes, deep brown and unnervingly calm, held the kind of focus one rarely saw in 10-year-old girls. She moved with purpose, cradling a stack of school books and a tattered notebook filled with hand-drawn equations and engine diagrams. To any stranger, she was just another poor kid on her way home from a place that had no use for dreams. Until she saw the car. It was out of place, gleaming cherry red, low to the ground, muscular and proud, even in defeat. A Ford Mustang GT 500, its hood raised in irritation, steam curling from its engine like a warning. A man stood beside it, pacing with sharp, agitated steps. He wore a tailored navy suit, the cuffs dusted with gravel, one sleeve rolled up just enough to reveal a Rolex that didn't belong in this town. Lucas Drake had never been this far out into the rural flatlands without a driver, and he wasn't happy about it. His cell signal was dead. His car, brand new and arrogantly fast, had decided to die 30 miles from the nearest mechanic. Sweat trickled down his temple, though it wasn't just the heat. He was late for a meeting with a state governor, an investment summit that could launch his next big venture. And now, thanks to this mechanical betrayal, he was stranded like a fool in the middle of nowhere. Anya stopped a few feet away, silent at first. She watched him, watched how his jaw clenched, how he tapped his phone like it might magically wake up. She recognized that kind of frustration, the kind that usually ended with yelling and no answers. But instead of turning away, she stepped forward. "You got coolant leaking," she said plainly, pointing at the trail under the front tire. "Probably the radiator hose." Lucas turned, startled. He blinked at her, squinting against the sun. "Excuse me?" She didn't flinch. "Your car. It's overheating. I can help. If you want." He looked her up and down. A skinny, dusty kid with holes in her sleeves offering to fix a supercharged V8. He nearly laughed. "Look, I don't have time to play games. There's a mechanic in town, right?" She shrugged. "Town's 8 miles that way. And he's drunk after 5. Lucas rubbed his face. This couldn't be real. Anya stepped around the car, knelt near the wheel, and poked gently at the underside of the engine. Her fingers were careful, practiced. "You got something I can use to clamp a hose?" "Hairpin, shoelace, zip tie." Lucas hesitated. "What the hell are you?" "I fix lawnmowers and trucks at home," she said, not looking up. "Uncle Ray taught me. Same principles. You either let me try or wait 3 hours in the sun for someone who probably won't come." Reluctantly, and with the kind of smirk only the entitled carry, Lucas tossed her a hair tie he pulled from his glove box.
"Fine.
"Knock yourself out, grease monkey." 15 minutes later, the steam was gone. The hose, temporarily secured with a clip and a twist of ingenuity, was stable. The Mustang purred like a lion waking up from a nap. Lucas stared at it, then at her, then back at the engine. Jesus. Anya stood up, brushing dirt from her knees. "Just don't drive too fast for a while. Keep an eye on the temperature." He opened his mouth, maybe to thank her, maybe to ask her how the hell she learned that, but then something caught his eye. The sunlight hit her hand, at just the right angle. A flicker of green. Not plastic, not glass, but emerald. Set in an old ring, the kind no child should be wearing. It shimmered for half a second, a perfect oval, etched with a barely visible crescent-shaped crack across one edge. Lucas froze. That ring. It had once belonged to someone else. Someone he hadn't seen in over a decade. He blinked again, the present slipping slightly out of focus. The ring wasn't just jewelry. It was a memory, buried and half forgotten, suddenly staring him in the face through the eyes of a girl who couldn't possibly know what it meant. "Where did you get that?" he asked, the edge in his voice cutting through the air. Anya's hand curled instinctively, guarding it. "It was my mom's. She gave it to me before she passed." Lucas took a slow step forward, unsure why his chest felt suddenly tight. "Your mom? What was her name?" "Diana." He stopped breathing. The name hit him like a punch. She turned to leave, as if nothing had happened, just another good deed in a world that rarely returned the favor. But Lucas stood still, watching her retreat into the heat haze, a child with grease on her fingers and a ring that shouldn't exist. And just like that, the world he thought he understood began to tilt. Not because the car had died, but because maybe, just maybe, the past he'd buried hadn't stayed buried. And a girl with oil-stained fingers might hold the key to everything he never wanted to remember. The emerald flickered again in his mind long after the girl had disappeared into the dust. Lucas remained standing on the side of the road, sweat drying on his skin, but something colder now pulsed beneath it, a chill that came not from the breeze but from memory. He slid into the driver's seat and shut the door, but didn't start the engine. Instead, he stared at his own reflection in the rear-view mirror. His face had aged well, at least on the surface. But behind his eyes, the past stirred, dragging its nails through time. Diana. He hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in 12 years. And when the girl had said it, so quietly, so effortlessly, he had nearly forgotten to breathe. The ring. That damned emerald ring. It had once rested on Diana's finger like it belonged there, catching the light when she laughed, shimmering against the skin of a woman who didn't belong in the world she was born into. Diana had always said it wasn't worth much, just a keepsake from her mother. But Lucas had known better. The engraving inside, the barely visible crescent fracture, the craftsmanship, he had traced every inch of it once, on a night he thought he'd never forget. But he had tried to forget. God knows he had tried. Back then, they were two nobodies in a forgotten neighborhood on the edge of Charlotte. He, a dropout with a busted bike and bigger ideas than the world had time for. She, the daughter of a waitress and a mystery father no one ever saw. They were 17 and stupid, and the ring had been a promise made beneath broken streetlights. She'd given it to him once, joking that if he ever got rich, he should use it to buy her a spaceship or a bookstore, whichever came first. But he'd given it back the day she vanished. Vanished without warning, without a word, like a ghost who had finally finished her haunting. He'd searched, at first in desperation, then in anger. He blamed her for his failures, for the hole she left behind, for making him feel something he couldn't put a name to. Eventually, he buried her memory under layers of ambition and steel. Built his life on silence. On forgetting. Until now. Until this girl, with her quiet eyes and steady hands, had looked at his car like it was just another puzzle to solve, and had worn that ring like it was a birthright. Could it be?
No.
It was impossible. Diana would have told him. Would have reached out. She wouldn't have left him blind to a child. Would she? Lucas slammed the steering wheel with the heel of his palm. "Damn it," he muttered, as if saying it out loud could exorcise the ache crawling through his ribs. He started the car and turned back toward the town he'd just escaped. There was no plan, just a gnawing instinct, louder than logic, louder than pride. He needed answers. Needed to know who the girl was. Needed to know if Diana had been alive long enough to give her that ring, to raise her, to remember him. Or if someone else had taken that emerald from a dead woman's hand. The town of Hollow Creek unfolded like a secret kept too long. Narrow streets lined with sleepy shops, a single diner that hadn't updated its menu since the 80s, and a gas station with one working pump. He parked in front of the general store and stepped out into the buzz of cicadas. A bell chimed as he pushed open the door, greeted by the musty scent of wood polish and old receipts. "Can I help you?" asked the woman behind the counter. Late 50s, hawk-eyed, the kind of Southern woman who remembered every face that passed through town in the last 3 decades. "I'm looking for a girl," Lucas said, realizing too late how that sounded. "I mean, she's maybe 10. Brown hair, Walked barefoot down the road this afternoon. Said her name was Anya. The woman tilted her head. Brown? That'd be Ray's niece. Lives down near the scrapyard. Lost her mom last year. Smart one, that kid. Quiet. Fixes engines like a miracle worker. Why are you asking? Lucas forced a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. She helped me earlier. Just wanted to thank her. The woman didn't buy it, not entirely. But she pointed down the road. Take the right past the water tower. There in the little trailer with the rusted fence. You'll see the sunflowers. Lucas nodded, but the word trailer stuck in his throat. He had imagined a house, a small one maybe, but not this. Not a scrapyard life. Not for Diana's daughter. The drive was short, but his thoughts stretched long. By the time he reached the gate, the sky was already softening into twilight. Cicadas wailed like they were warning him not to knock. But he did. The man who opened the door had hands like tree roots and eyes that had seen war. Ray Brown, no doubt. Behind him, through a broken window, Lucas saw her, Anya, curled up on a couch, a book in her lap and a look on her face like she'd never seen peace, only truce. Ray stepped outside, closing the door behind him. You're the guy from the highway? I am. You here for the car? No, Lucas said, and it took effort to steady his voice. I'm here for the ring. The one on her finger. Ray didn't flinch, but something flickered behind his gaze. It's her mother's. She don't take it off. Her mother, Diana, she was someone I used to know. A long time ago. Ray nodded slowly. Then I guess you should know. Diana passed 2 winters ago. Cancer. She never talked much about her past. But she made me promise one thing before she died. Lucas swallowed. What? That the girl wouldn't grow up needing anyone. Not even the man she never met. It hit like a slap. Lucas staggered half a step, breath catching in his chest. She knew. She'd known. And she never called. Never wrote. She'd chosen silence as her final gift. Ray watched him, expression unreadable. I don't know what kind of man you are now. But if you're here to stir things up, walk away. That girl's got a chance at peace. Don't take it from her just because the past came knocking. Lucas didn't answer. He couldn't. He just stood there, looking at the rusted trailer, the sliver of a child through the glass, the glint of emerald light as she turned a page. The past had found him. But whether he deserved a place in her future, that was another story. The next morning came with a silence that felt unnatural, like the world was holding its breath. Lucas had slept in his car just outside Hollow Creek, parked beneath a cluster of sycamores that whispered like they knew things he didn't. His neck ached. His back was stiff. But it wasn't the physical discomfort that kept his hands shaking around the coffee cup he'd picked up from a roadside diner. It was the question that refused to die. Why did Diana never call? The more he tried to accept Ray's explanation, the promise of independence, the clean break from the past, the less it fit. Diana had never been the kind to run from storms. She faced them, head-on, with defiance and grace. For her to vanish, to erase him from the life of a child that might be his, it didn't just feel cruel. It felt wrong, like something else had forced her hand. And then he remembered something else. The badge. Back when they were 17, Diana had once shown him a worn leather folder tucked into her mother's sewing box. Inside it had been a child's medical record, a name he didn't recognize, and a government ID card belonging to a man named Charles Wexler, Diana's alleged father, according to her mother. He'd been a senior administrator at a facility called Dawnlight Orphanage. Lucas hadn't thought much of it at the time, just assumed it was another piece of the chaotic puzzle that was Diana's home life. But now it resurfaced with the weight of unfinished business. Dawnlight. He searched it on his phone, fingers trembling over the keys. The orphanage was only 30 miles away, tucked behind a county forest preserve, too remote to be noticed by accident. Still operational, still claiming to be a non-profit foster transition center. He started the engine. The road curved through dying woods and fog-soaked fields before revealing a building that looked too pleasant to hold anything wicked. Dawnlight Orphanage stood 3 stories high, painted in a welcoming shade of blue, with children's murals stretching across its outer walls, smiling suns, handprints, birds that would never fly. Wind chimes danced in the breeze. The front gate opened automatically as he approached, and he hated how smoothly it all worked. It was the kind of place built to look innocent, as if hiding beneath a fresh coat of paint could silence whatever had happened inside. Lucas stepped through the front doors and into a lobby scented with disinfectant and lemon. A woman greeted him, middle-aged, tidy, her name tag reading Marla, director. Here for tour, she smiled. We love when donors drop in. He forced a smile of his own. I'm looking into the facility. Private research. Historical records, mostly. Marla's face held a flicker of hesitation, but she nodded. We've been operating since 1983. A lot of stories here. Mostly good. Mostly. That word sat on his chest like a stone. They walked the halls. Children's laughter rang through the air, unnervingly rehearsed. Rooms filled with crayon drawings, board games, soft pillows. Too soft. Too staged. Every corner curated like a photo in a brochure. Lucas kept his voice light. Any old records? From the 90s, maybe? Marla tilted her head. Records before 2001 were digitized and archived. Why? I'm looking into someone. Diana Wexler. Her smile faltered. I'm not sure I can help you with that, she said, voice cooling. We protect all client histories, even past ones. Especially if they've passed on. He didn't blink. She lived here, didn't she? Marla didn't answer, but her silence was enough. I'm not here to make trouble, Lucas added, lowering his voice. I just need to know what happened. She died in 2023. Left behind a daughter. I think the girl's mine, but there are pieces that don't make sense. Like why Diana disappeared. Why she never told me. Why she ended up in Hollow Creek with nothing. Still silence. Lucas tried a different route. She once told me there were rumors about this place. That kid's vanished. That staff were moved around to avoid questions. Marla finally looked at him, something hard now showing beneath the polish. If you're implying something criminal, I suggest you talk to the county. Dawnlight has never been formally investigated. And unless you have a court order, I'm afraid you'll have to leave. He didn't argue. He walked out, back into the cold wind that had returned while he was inside. But now the smiles of the children behind those windows didn't feel comforting. They felt choreographed. On his way to the car, a small boy waved at him from the play area. Lucas waved back. The child stared at him, then held up something in his hand. A ring. Not emerald. Silver. But unmistakably adult. A man's ring, too large for a child to wear, heavy with a military insignia. Lucas stopped in his tracks. Where'd you get that? He asked, stepping closer. The boy shrugged. It was in the box. The one under the stairs. What box? But before the boy could answer, a staffer came and pulled him away, whispering something sharp in his ear. The boy looked back once, fear darting across his face. Then he vanished behind the glass. Lucas stood alone in the gravel lot, heart pounding, breath uneven. A box under the stairs. A dead woman. A girl with an emerald ring. And now a silver ring, military issue, hidden in a child's play area. Something inside Dawnlight was rotten. Not just in the past. Still now. Still watching. Still smiling. He drove off, with one thought spiraling through him like a storm. Whatever darkness Diana had escaped, she hadn't escaped it alone. And maybe, just maybe, her silence had been a shield, not a betrayal. The question now was, shield from what? Lucas didn't drive home that night. He drove until the trees thinned and the sky turned to ash, until the guilt and suspicion tangled so deeply inside him that even the radio couldn't drown them out. He parked behind a shuttered gas station 2 towns over, closed his eyes, and tried to imagine Diana's voice again. But it was no longer soft and playful. It was frayed, trembling, like a whisper trapped beneath floorboards. At sunrise, he checked his phone. 1 missed call. Unknown number. His breath hitched. He called it back. No answer. But a voicemail had come through. One he hadn't noticed in the haze of yesterday. The voice was male,
Horse.
Cautious. If you're the one looking into dawnlight, meet me behind the old train yard in Miller's Crossing. Noon. Don't be followed. No name. Just coordinates and the weight of something unsaid. Lucas showed up early. The place was all rust and ghosts, abandoned rail cars sunk in tall grass, old graffiti weathered into regret. He waited, watched, and at 12 on the a man appeared. Older, military posture, even in civilian clothes. Gray hair, eyes sharp behind dark glasses. He didn't introduce himself. Just tossed Lucas a small envelope, thick with folded pages, yellowed at the edges. She wrote to you, the man said.
Twice.
Both times the letters were intercepted. We found this one buried in a file meant for shredding. Took a decade to resurface. Lucas opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter, handwritten in green ink, in a slanted script he recognized instantly. Diana. Lucas. If this ever reaches you, it means someone didn't give up. I hope it's you. I hope you're alive. I hope you're still the boy who waited for me under the bleachers even when the storm came. You need to know the truth.
Not just about me. About them.
About why I left. Dawnlight wasn't a home. It was a holding pen. For kids they couldn't place. Kids no one would miss. Some had scars. Others had secrets. Most had both. My father wasn't who I thought he was. He didn't work there. He ran it. They used us. Experimented. Medicated. Re-educated. Names changed. Birthdays changed. Some of us were moved. Others weren't so lucky. I got out when I was 16. With help. There's a man, Major Henry Quinn, retired Special Forces. He and a few others found out what was happening. But they couldn't go public. Too many sealed files. Too many judges bought off. So they built something else. A network. They called themselves the Quiet Chain. Veterans. Social workers. Priests. Janitors. All invisible. All watching. Not to fight. To protect. To make sure none of us slipped through again. They helped me disappear. They got me a new ID, a job, a small house. They warned me never to contact anyone from before. But I broke that rule. I came to see you. You were with someone. I saw you laughing, happy. I couldn't take that from you. Then I found out I was pregnant. I tried to stay under the radar. But someone from Dawnlight found me again. I don't know how. I think it was the ring. The emerald one you gave me. I wore it every day.
Stupid, right?
It was like a flare in the dark. They started circling, asking questions, pretending to be from child services. My girl was just a baby. I couldn't run anymore. So I sent her to a town they'd never think to check. Hollow Creek. Quiet. Unremarkable. You always said small towns had the strongest people. Maybe you were right. If you find her, our daughter, tell her I tried. I tried everything. Tell her I never stopped loving her. Or you. And that somewhere in the dark, people are still fighting for her. Quietly. Relentlessly. Tell her to never trust smiles with empty eyes. Forever yours.
D.
Lucas couldn't move. He stared at the ink, the loops and tears in the paper, the last thread of her voice reaching out through time. A dozen emotions tore through him. Rage, sorrow, awe.
He looked up at the man.
You're Major Quinn. The man didn't deny it. We kept her alive for 5 years longer than they wanted. But then they got close. She gave us the child. We placed her. Changed records. Wiped every trace. Lucas was silent for a long time. Then, why now? Quinn pulled a flash drive from his pocket and set it beside the letter. Because someone started digging into Dawnlight's old land deeds. Someone with money. They're not looking for kids. They're looking for evidence. And if they find the girl, your daughter, they'll use her as leverage. Lucas's voice was low. What kind of evidence? Black budgets. Human trials. They buried the physical files. But there's metadata, encrypted transfers, logs, research memos. And the girl might have inherited something. A trait. A marker. We don't know yet. Lucas picked up the drive. So what do I do? Keep her safe. Follow the trail quietly. Use what's on there to trace who's pulling strings now. And if they come for her again, Quinn's voice cracked. Burn the whole orchard, not just the tree. The old soldier vanished down the tracks like a ghost returning to dirt, leaving Lucas with a letter, a flash drive, and a purpose colder than steel. In the distance, a train horn echoed across the fields, like something ancient remembering its path. Diana's past wasn't just tragic. It was weaponized. And now, so was her legacy. Lucas knew war. Not the kind waged in deserts or cities, but the quieter kind, the one that seeped into your bones long after the fighting stopped. The kind that came when there were no uniforms, no flags, just shadows and choices. He had waged that war in his mind every night since Diana vanished. Now it was no longer a memory. It had taken shape. And it had a name. Sable Dynamics. The corporation had quietly bought the land where Dawnlight once stood. On paper, they were a tech and wellness firm investing in neurological research. In truth, they were the gravediggers of every secret the orphanage buried, and they were getting closer to what Diana had died to hide. He returned to Hollow Creek. He hadn't been back since receiving the letter. It was late, and the small town slept in its hush of porch lights and cricket song. But lights still glowed in the old cottage on Maple Hill. Through the window, he saw her, Avery. 15 now. Strong jaw, fire in her eyes.
She didn't know yet.
Not the whole truth. But the way she carried herself, guarded, instinctive, it was as if part of Diana still lived in her spine. Lucas didn't knock. He waited until morning. And when he did step inside, everything moved too fast. A man in a charcoal suit was already there, sipping tea with Avery's foster guardian, a soft-spoken librarian named Martha. The man's smile was carved from something artificial. He rose when Lucas entered, hand extended. "Mr. Ross, isn't it? I'm Everett Lang, with Social Family Welfare Bureau. We're doing a review of certain placement records." But his badge was wrong. Lucas knew military-grade fakes when he saw them. So he played dumb, smiled,
Sat down.
watched. Avery watched too. She wasn't fooled. "I'm fine where I am," she said, arms crossed. Lang chuckled politely. "Of course. But we've received some concerns about inconsistencies in your background. Missing vaccination logs, misplaced medical forms." Lucas's jaw tightened. The same old playbook. Start with bureaucracy. Then intimidation. Then disappearance. He leaned forward. "She stays." Lang's smile didn't flicker, but his voice cooled. "We'll be back. With federal warrants, if needed." And just like that, he was gone. By nightfall, Lucas had a plan. He met with Quinn in a storage unit 2 towns over. Inside were crates, old files, burner phones, weapons cleaned and ready. Honor didn't wear medals here. It carried silencers and encrypted drives. "We don't go after Lang," Lucas said. "We go after who's bankrolling him. Follow the money." It led them to a name. Dr. Callista Monroe. Former defense neurobiologist turned biotech mogul. CEO of Sable. She'd authored the early-stage tests for neural mapping on children marked with trauma-inducing traits, empathy suppression, moral disengagement, controlled behavioral response. In other words, engineered apathy. The trials had started at Dawnlight. Lucas broke into her lakeside estate the night of a charity gala. While cameras followed Monroe on the red carpet, Lucas slipped into her study, using schematics Quinn acquired through old military contacts. In a hidden drawer beneath her desk was a ledger, cryptic but real. Trial subjects.
Dates.
Failures. One name jumped out. Subject 47. Diana E. Wren. His heart shattered. The file detailed her resistance, the failures of chemical compliance, her escape. Monroe had personally signed the termination order. He took the files. All of them. And leaked them. Not to press. To the Senate Committee on Veteran Affairs. To the Department of Justice. To an anonymous international watchdog network that had been quietly waiting for proof. And he released one more thing. Diana's letter. The world moved slowly at first. But then something shifted. Monroe's accounts were frozen. Lang disappeared. Former staffers at Dawnlight began receiving subpoenas. Whistleblowers emerged, one by one. Some too afraid to speak, but others with nothing left to lose. But justice isn't a clean thing. It leaves stains. One night, as Lucas sat by the creek near Avery's school, he saw a figure across the bank. Black coat. Rifle. No warning. Just a shot.
He ducked.
Rolled. Returned fire. By the time Quinn arrived, the man was gone. But Lucas's arm was grazed, blood soaking his sleeve. Avery found him seconds later. Her voice shook. "You were going to leave again, weren't you?" "No," he rasped. "I came back for you." And for the first time, he told her everything. About Diana. About the ring. About the network of men and women who risked everything for children they'd never meet. He showed her the ledger. Her mother's name. The sacrifices. She didn't cry. She clenched her jaw the same way Diana had. She took the letter from his hand and read it aloud beneath the stars, her voice cracking but strong. "I'm not afraid," she said when she finished. "They want me to be a file number. I'll be a name instead." Lucas smiled through the pain. "Then you've already won." At dawn, a convoy of unmarked vehicles pulled into town. DOJ. Witness protection. Analysts. Quinn nodded. "She's safe now." "Truly." Lucas looked at Avery. "What about justice?" Quinn's voice was low. "Sometimes, justice isn't a gavel. It's survival. And sometimes, honor is letting the next generation live louder than we did." And as the convoy drove away, Lucas stood in the dust. One man. One war. One promise kept. But something told him the story wasn't over. Not yet. The ring no longer felt like a relic of loss. It pulsed against Avery's skin like a heartbeat. Diana's heartbeat. The facets of emerald caught the morning sun as she stood at the edge of the orchard behind the school, where everything had once felt safe, and nothing truly had been. They offered her a new name, a new city, protection. But she said no. Not out of pride, not even out of vengeance, but because something in her refused to let Diana's voice die again. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a witness.
A daughter.
A bearer of memory. Lucas didn't try to stop her. He simply walked beside her to the courthouse steps the morning she testified. The room was full. Senators, prosecutors, agents with pens poised over notepads. But none of that mattered. She held the ring in her palm as she spoke. They had taken notes. She returned names. They had asked dates. She gave them voices. She spoke of the lullabies Diana used to sing when nightmares crawled under the orphanage doors. She described the cold fluorescent lights of the rooms labeled therapy, where no child came out the same. She told them what Diana had done. Sneaking out medical reports, smuggling evidence in her apron seams, hiding children in the laundry chute when inspectors came. And when they asked, "What do you want from this?" Avery didn't hesitate.
Truth.
And not just on paper. "I want them to say her name. Out loud. In the record. I want the system to remember that someone gave her life for children it forgot." There was silence. Heavy. Respectful. Weeks passed. The headlines came, brutal and unapologetic. Biotech giant collapses under orphan trial scandal. Monroe indicted. Neurochemical testing on children confirmed. But none of that compared to the moment Avery stood before a classroom full of foster kids, boys and girls of every shade and sorrow, and told them her story. Not the trauma. The after. She showed them the ring. Let them hold it. Not as a relic, but as a torch. "This doesn't make me special," she said. "It makes me responsible. And so are you." The kids looked at her differently after that, not with pity, but with a strange, shining hope. Some began writing letters to the government. Others painted murals of children with wings. One of them, a boy with a stutter, hugged her after class and whispered, "You remind me of someone I haven't met yet." Lucas watched all of it from a distance. He never stayed too long. Honor, for him, meant knowing when to step back. But each time he saw Avery speak, his chest ached. Not from pain, but something else. Something like peace. He started working quietly again, not as a soldier but as a guide. A network of veterans and old friends reactivated one by one. They helped recover files, protect whistleblowers, teach resilience to kids in vulnerable shelters. The world called it a movement. He called it redemption. Years later, on the anniversary of Diana's death, Avery stood at a podium in front of a memorial stone etched with names the world nearly erased. The sky was soft with dusk, the orchard behind them blooming again. She wore a bracelet now. Not the ring. It sat on a velvet case, enshrined for others to see. But the ring's impression had never left her hand. Honor, she said to the crowd, is not something we inherit. It's something we pass forward. My mother taught me that. With silence. With sacrifice. With love. Then she looked at Lucas in the front row, his eyes glinting with everything he didn't say. And she smiled. Not as a girl haunted by secrets, but as a woman chosen by light. A survivor. A witness. And now, finally, a protector.